Most people are terrified of silence, and that's exactly why it holds power. In a world overloaded with noise, endless opinions, performative outrage, impulsive replies, silence becomes the one thing that unsettles the herd. It's in silence that thoughts are exposed, not hidden. People fill rooms with words because they fear what would surface in the absence of them. Silence exposes what words conceal. When you stop speaking, you start listening, not just to others but to the friction between your instincts and your logic. And in that friction, reality begins to crystallize. You become dangerous, not because you speak less, but because you begin to see more. Silence isn't emptiness, it is pressure. Pressure that compels the mind to reveal its rawest form. When left alone with silence, people begin to unravel. Their confidence cracks, their facade weakens. It's in this unguarded state that truth becomes extractable, not through force, but by withdrawal. It is the sound of your mind being forced to confront itself without distraction. Most people aren't afraid of others. They're afraid of their own thoughts, and silence traps them in a room with that fear. When you weaponize silence, you're not just observing, you're forcing confession without ever asking a question. Let me be clear, silence is not the absence of intelligence, it's often its signature. Those who speak less are not less capable. They are calculating, observing, measuring the weight of every sentence before it's released. Words should not be thrown, they should be deployed. Every word you utter builds a psychological profile, not for others, but for those who are watching you closely. The more you say, the easier it is to predict you. The less you say, the harder it is to control you. In silence, you control the narrative without ever contributing to it. If you are constantly talking, you're broadcasting your hand before the game has even begun. The more visible your strategy, the more vulnerable it becomes. In silence, ambiguity becomes your armor. You allow assumptions to breed, and in doing so, you gain control without confrontation. You're not hiding, you're architecting. Silence allows for unpredictability. People fear unpredictability because it removes their illusion of control. When you're silent, they can't categorize you, and humans hate the undefined. That makes silence your shield and your sword. It protects your intent and disrupts theirs. It makes people uncomfortable because they can't read you. They project their assumptions onto you, and in doing so, they reveal more about themselves than you ever will. You learn more by being unreadable than by being expressive. The less you show, the more they reveal. Silence becomes surveillance, passive but devastatingly effective. While they speak, they expose themselves, their habits, their insecurities, their desperation to be understood. And while they unravel aloud, you remain concealed. Silence is not passive observation. It is silent dissection. That is the power dynamic shifting silently, pun intended, in your favor. In chess, it's not always the most aggressive player who wins. It's the one who can read 3 moves ahead, in silence, while their opponent wastes time celebrating a pawn's advance. The loud victory is often just a quiet trap. Celebration is often the camouflage of insecurity. Those who boast are often compensating. Those who stay silent are already calculating the next strike. The louder someone declares victory, the more likely they're covering a weakness. You see, true control isn't loud, it's subtle. It's woven into gestures, pauses, and the quiet spaces between actions. A raised eyebrow can do more damage than an entire argument. Because power isn't in the decibels, it's in the calibration. A glance, a pause, a lack of response. These are weapons more refined than rage. Rage is clumsy. It demands attention but loses precision. Silence, on the other hand, sharpens. It doesn't lose focus. It doesn't beg to be seen. It simply watches and waits until there's only one move left to make. Silence doesn't just speak. It calculates impact per syllable, per breath. Silence lets you dominate the tempo, and control of tempo is control of outcome. You're not being passive, You're becoming the mirror that reflects truth. And when people see themselves reflected in silence, they panic. They fill the void with excuses, emotion, desperation, anything to avoid the confrontation of their own thoughts. Let them. Your silence isn't an absence. It's a design. And in design, everything is intentional. Even what's left unsaid, especially what's left unsaid. The strongest message is often the one they have to interpret, because if they're still trying to understand you, they're not focused on defeating you. Understand this, not every battle is won by reaction. Some are won in stillness, in restraint, in the pauses between the noise. In fact, the quickest way to lose control is to react to everything. The world wants you reactive, predictable, impulsive, loud, but if you are unshakable in your silence, you become immovable. Immovability isn't stubbornness. It's the result of internal equilibrium. You've already measured the battlefield before entering it. You don't need to adjust. The world bends around those who don't flinch. And the immovable are feared. That's the paradox of silence. It appears passive, yet it shapes everything around it. People scramble to fill it. Environments shift to break it. But you, by doing nothing, become the gravitational center of the room. While others flinch, speak, defend, the silent individual is already 10 steps ahead. Not because they are slow, but because they are deliberate. Deliberation is what separates instinct from strategy. The loud act on impulse, the silent operate on calculation. Each second of silence is a step back from chaos. Not retreating, but realigning. Realignment isn't passive, it's strategic distancing. You don't join the noise, you isolate from it, surgically until what remains is clarity, and then your move becomes inevitable. That's when real precision is born. If you can master the discipline of silence, you can hear everything. The patterns in speech, the cracks in logic, the insecurities masked by arrogance. When others reveal themselves impulsively, you remain composed, surgically precise. This isn't about arrogance, it's about clarity. You're not silent to appear mysterious. You're silent because understanding takes precedence over attention. And attention without understanding is just noise disguised as relevance. The one who speaks last often speaks with the most force, not because they waited, but because they watched. And while the others exhaust themselves performing, the silent one conserves every ounce of energy for impact. Most people think silence is weakness, that it means you're withholding because you're unsure. But let them believe that. Let them mistake quiet for cowardice, because silence isn't for the weak. It's a discipline. It means resisting the temptation to prove, defend, or perform. It's letting the game unfold while you position yourself outside the chaos. Not above it, but beyond it, because when you finally move, they'll realize it wasn't hesitation. It was preparation. Think of silence as a test, not for you, but for them. Will they break under it? Will they fill it with desperate words, or will they learn to listen? Those who survive silence become worthy of being heard, because silence isn't just endured, it's mastered. Once you've lived within its discomfort, you learn to navigate discomfort. You become the calm within their storm, and that's when they start looking to you without you saying a word. There is no stronger presence than the one who sits still while the world spins chaotically around. The person who isn't thrown by provocation, who doesn't need to prove. That is the person everyone ends up answering to. Because leadership doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just listens until it's time to act. The loud demand followers, the silent earn them through presence alone. So don't just speak when you have something to say. Speak only when silence no longer suffices. Until then, let the silence do the talking. It speaks louder than most people ever will. So speak with your silence until speaking becomes necessary. And when that moment comes, let every word carry the weight of everything you didn't say. And that's when people finally understand. You were never quiet because you lacked something to say. You were quiet because what you had to say was too exact, too complete, for the chaos to interrupt. By now, you've probably realized something. This isn't about staying quiet. It's about learning to stop wasting motion. Every word you speak has a cost, not in energy, but in precision. People speak casually because they think the world isn't listening. But it is, always. And the more you say, the easier it becomes to define you, categorize you, control you. Silence resists that. Silence removes the pattern. It turns you from a readable file into an unreadable variable, still present but undefined. That's what you want to become, not invisible, not passive, just unreadable. In the structure of control, noise is chaos. But silence is structure. It sets the rhythm of a room. It slows down time. It creates friction between people and their own thoughts. And in that friction, you gain space. Space to think, space to move, space to win. Because the truth is, silence doesn't exist in opposition to action. It is the environment in which the most powerful actions are made. When you strip away the noise, what's left is function. Only decisions, only outcomes. You don't need to be heard to control a situation. You only need to be underestimated for long enough, and silence ensures that. So keep this in mind. The longer you remain silent, the more the world begins to imagine who you are. The more they imagine, the more they project. And the more they project, the more they reveal. While you reveal nothing, that's not passivity. That's asymmetrical advantage. You don't ask for permission. You don't need understanding. You don't participate in noise. You study it. You predict it. And when necessary, you end it. Not with volume, not with spectacle, just with one move, one sentence, one outcome. No performance, no closure, no announcement, just silence used precisely to collapse everything around it. This is the power most people ignore, because they don't understand it, and they don't fear what they don't understand until it's already too late.